2 days after losing Iskander missiles, Russia sent its S-300 to strike. Ukraine turned the convoy into ash.
Russia did not lose an S-300 convoy by accident. It lost it because the battlefield has changed faster than its doctrine. Just 2 days after Ukraine destroyed a key Iskander missile depot in Crimea, Moscow attempted to strike back using S-300 systems repurposed for ground attacks. What followed was not retaliation, but exposure. As the convoy redeployed, Ukrainian drones were already waiting. Within minutes, launchers burned. Radar went dark. Crews scattered. This was not a lucky hit. It was a planned dismantling. One that revealed how modern drone warfare can erase even the most expensive air defense systems before they ever fire a shot. If this breakdown helps you see the war more clearly, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for the next analysis. December 15th, 2 days after the strike that changed everything. The destruction of Russia's Iskander missile depot in Crimea was not just a tactical strike, it was a strategic shockwave. Satellite imagery later revealed the scale of the loss. Dozens of Iskander-M missiles, each valued at over $3 million, destroyed in a single night. The blast radius scorched more than 17 hectares, and secondary explosions burned for hours. For Moscow, this meant one thing. Crimea had just lost its most reliable strike weapon. In Kiev, the response was immediate, but not emotional. It was calculated. Ukrainian intelligence did not wait to see if Russia would retaliate. They focused on how. With Iskander stocks crippled, analysts concluded that the Kremlin would turn to the only long-range option still available in quantity: S-300 air defense systems repurposed for ground attacks. That shift was predictable, and that predictability became the trap. Within hours, Ukrainian ISR assets were activated. Long-endurance reconnaissance drones, supported by NATO shared signals intelligence, began tracking Russian air defense units along key corridors. The focus was narrow and deliberate. Mobile S-300 convoys relocating from fixed positions to improvised launch sites. This was the most vulnerable moment for any air defense system. During movement, S-300 units operate blind. Radars are powered down. Launchers are exposed. Convoys stretch across kilometers of open road. A single destroyed radar vehicle can render the entire system useless. Ukrainian planners built their strategy around this weakness. By the time Russian commanders ordered their S-300 units to redeploy, Ukrainian strike drones were already armed, fueled, and waiting. Flight paths were preloaded. Communication relays were established. Multiple drone teams were dispersed to avoid electronic warfare interference. This was no reactive defense. It was a premeditated counterstrike, designed not to intercept missiles, but to erase the launchers before they could fire. And once the first Russian convoy crossed that invisible line, the trap snapped shut. 05:42 a.m. The moment the Russian S-300 convoy left its hardened position, the clock started ticking. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones were already overhead, flying silent at altitudes between 2,000 and 3,000 meters, far beyond the range of small arms fire. Below them, the convoy stretched across nearly 4 kilometers of open road. Launchers, radar vehicles, command trucks, and ammunition carriers moving in a loose formation. This was not a combat posture. It was a relocation under pressure, and that made it lethal. Within minutes, coordinates were confirmed. Signal signatures matched known 30 N6 fire control radar vehicles, the brain of the S-300 system. Without it, every launcher becomes dead weight. Ukrainian operators did not hesitate. 5:58 a.m. The first wave of attack drones was released. Flying low, barely 15 meters above the ground, FP-5 drones cut through the terrain, threading between tree lines and road embankments to avoid Russian electronic warfare. At speeds exceeding 120 kilometers per hour, they gave Russian crews seconds, sometimes less, to react. The first impact was surgical. A drone slammed directly into the radar vehicle. The explosion was not massive, but it was decisive. In one strike, a system worth over $100 million was effectively blinded. Screens went dark. Communications collapsed. Launch authorization vanished. Panic followed. Russian crews abandoned vehicles. Some tried to deploy man pads. Others scattered into nearby cover. but the convoy was already marked. Heat signatures, vehicle outlines, movement patterns, every detail was being fed live to Ukrainian strike teams. This was no longer an ambush. It was a hunt. What made this moment particularly infuriating for Ukrainian commanders was the purpose of that convoy. Those S-300 missiles were not meant to stop aircraft. They were intended to be fired blindly into Ukrainian cities. Missiles with warheads weighing up to 150 kilograms, known for their inaccuracy, known for civilian casualties. Stopping them here meant saving lives later. And so the order was clear: do not let a single launcher escape.
If you think this was the end of it, stay with me, because what came next turned a disabled convoy into a burning graveyard of Russian air defense.
Once the radar vehicle was destroyed, the convoy did not pause. It broke. Russian crews understood the reality instantly. Without the 30N6 radar, the S-300 system was dead. No targeting data, no coordination, no protection. What remained were launchers carrying missiles worth up to $2 million each, now sitting exposed on an open road. And the drones kept coming. Ukrainian operators launched the next strike wave within seconds. This time, there was no hesitation and no spacing. Multiple FPV drones attacked simultaneously, diving from different angles to prevent evasive maneuvers. The first launcher was hit at 6:07 a.m. The drone struck the missile canister directly. The detonation was immediate. One missile ignited another, then another. Within seconds, the entire launcher erupted. Flames shot upward more than 20 meters, and the shock wave shattered windows nearly 2 kilometers away. Before the smoke settled, a second drone struck. This time, the target was a command vehicle attempting to turn off the road. The explosion tore through its roof, killing communications instantly. The convoy lost all remaining coordination. Panic replaced orders. Drivers accelerated blindly. One launcher veered off-road, attempting to escape across uneven terrain. It traveled less than 150 meters before a drone slammed into its rear axle. The vehicle flipped onto its side. Missiles ruptured. A secondary blast followed, larger than the first. The road became a fire corridor. Ukrainian drones now attacked in rapid succession, one strike every 30 to 40 seconds. Launchers, support trucks, ammunition carriers. Anything that moved was marked, tracked, and destroyed. Russian crews tried to respond. Several soldiers fired manpads. Others attempted small arms fire. None succeeded. The drones flew too low, too fast, and too close. At speeds exceeding 120 kilometers per hour, reaction time was measured in heartbeats. By 6:15 a.m., the convoy was no longer a convoy, it was scattered wreckage. At least 3 S-300 launchers burned uncontrollably. A missile resupply truck exploded with such force that debris landed across both sides of the road. Thermal signatures exceeded 1,300 degrees Celsius, igniting vegetation and vehicles alike. Survivors abandoned equipment and fled into nearby tree lines. Ukrainian operators slowed only to confirm destruction. Cameras lingered on twisted launch tubes, collapsed chassis, and missiles split open by heat. This was not harassment. This was systematic elimination. And as smoke rose into the morning sky, one conclusion was unavoidable. Russia's S-300 counterstrike had collapsed before it truly began, and the most violent phase was still ahead. By the time the remaining Russian vehicles attempted to escape, the kill zone had already tightened. Ukrainian operators widened the strike radius instead of rushing in. Reconnaissance drones climbed slightly, maintaining full visual dominance. Burning launchers now served as infrared markers, their heat signatures visible from over 10 kilometers away. Smoke rose in thick columns, eliminating any chance of concealment or regrouping. At 6:18 a.m., the final containment phase began. A missile resupply truck, still intact, accelerated in reverse, attempting to retreat along the same route it had entered. It made it less than 400 meters. The first drone struck the driver's cabin. Seconds later, a second drone hit the cargo compartment. The explosion was massive. Stored missiles detonated sequentially, generating a blast force estimated at several tons of TNT equivalent. Shrapnel ripped through nearby vehicles and cratered the road's surface. The convoy was now trapped inside its own wreckage. Moments later, the last operational S-300 launcher attempted to pivot off-road. Ukrainian operators tracked the movement instantly. One FPV drone approached from low altitude, detonating directly beneath the missile tubes. The launcher collapsed inward as missiles ruptured almost simultaneously. Flames engulfed the chassis. Another $100 million system was gone. By 06:26 a.m., organized movement had ceased. No engines running, no radio transmissions detected, no coordinated response. Ukrainian drones circled methodically, confirming destruction vehicle by vehicle. Cameras captured twisted launch rails, shattered electronics, and missile casings split open by heat and pressure. The roadway itself had become a scorched corridor nearly 5 kilometers long, littered with debris and burning wreckage. This was not chaos, it was closure. Every escape route had been anticipated. Every surviving asset had been tracked. The convoy was not merely neutralized, it was erased. And with it, the illusion that air defense systems could move freely under modern drone warfare disappeared entirely. The silence that followed the destruction was not relief, it was shock. Within minutes, Russian command channels registered what had just happened. An entire S-300 convoy, launchers, radar components, command vehicles, missile stocks, had been wiped out in a single engagement. Preliminary assessments estimated losses between $350 and $450 million, not including trained personnel. For Moscow, this was not just equipment loss, it was capability loss. S-300 systems are not interchangeable assets. Each launcher depends on a network of radar, command logic, and crew coordination. Losing even one element degrades the whole structure. Losing several at once collapsed it entirely. Operational consequences followed immediately. Planned S-300 ground attack launches were halted. Fire missions scheduled for later that day were quietly canceled. Intelligence monitoring showed a drop of more than 60% in S-300 missile activity across the sector within 48 hours. The retaliation Moscow had promised after the Crimea strike never materialized. Crew losses worsened the impact. Air defense operators are highly trained specialists. Replacing them takes years, not weeks. Survivors from the convoy were scattered, disorganized, and in some cases unreachable. Command cohesion suffered as units questioned their own survivability during movement. To compensate, Russian planners began shifting air defense assets from other regions. Systems were pulled from Crimea, southern Russia, and rear area installations. This redistribution was rushed and uneven, and it created gaps. Fuel depots, logistics hubs, and command nodes previously shielded by layered air defense were suddenly exposed. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones detected the change almost immediately, mapping new vulnerabilities and adjusting strike routes accordingly. The irony was impossible to ignore. A system designed to protect Russian skies had been destroyed while attempting to strike Ukrainian cities. The counterattack meant to restore deterrence had instead stripped it away. By nightfall, Russian commanders faced a new operational reality. Movement itself had become a risk, and every redeployment could trigger another disaster. What followed the destruction of the S-300 convoy was not immediate retaliation. It was hesitation. For the first time, Russian commanders faced a battlefield where air defense systems were no longer a guarantee of safety, but a liability during movement. Static deployment invited precision strikes. Mobility invited annihilation. Every option carried risk. This shift rippled outward. Within days, Ukrainian reconnaissance detected reduced radar activity across multiple sectors. Air defense coverage thinned. Gaps appeared along routes once considered protected. Drone flight paths expanded deeper, staying airborne longer and operating with increased confidence. The cost imbalance was impossible to ignore. Ukrainian FPV drones used in the strike were estimated to cost between $20,000 and $50,000 each. In exchange, they eliminated systems worth hundreds of millions. The exchange ratio exceeded 1 to 1,000, a level of asymmetry that fundamentally alters strategic planning. But the deeper impact was psychological. Russian crews began delaying redeployments. Convoys moved at night, slower, more dispersed. Launch authorization required higher-level approval. Every delay reduced tempo. Every hesitation ceded initiative. Ukraine exploited this immediately. Fuel depots, logistics nodes, and command facilities, previously protected by S-300 umbrellas, were struck in follow-on operations. Each successful hit reinforced the same message. Air defense systems could no longer shield ground assets unless they survived the journey. This was not a single victory. It was a doctrinal fracture. The strike on the Iskander depot on December 13th removed Russia's offensive spear. The destruction of the S-300 convoy days later shattered its defensive shield. Together, they forced a reassessment of how Russia could fight and how Ukraine could dictate tempo. The battlefield had shifted, not because of overwhelming force, but because of anticipation, coordination, and timing. And in modern war, that combination is often decisive. What happened on that road was more than a successful strike. It was a warning. In a matter of minutes, systems once considered untouchable, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, were reduced to burning wreckage by drones that cost a fraction of that price. The destruction of the Iskander depot removed Russia's offensive spear. The annihilation of the S-300 convoy shattered its defensive shield. Together, they revealed a battlefield that has fundamentally changed. This was not about numbers, it was about timing, preparation, and understanding the enemy's weakest moment. For Ukraine, it proved that anticipation can be deadlier than reaction. For Russia, it exposed a dangerous truth. Mobility no longer guarantees survival. And as this war continues to evolve, one question now hangs over every convoy, every redeployment, every launch order. Will it make it out alive? If you want to see how this shift is reshaping the next phase of the war, let me know your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for the next breakdown.